Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about count them, five biggest IDP NFL free agency winners.
Hike!
So in this episode, just like our previous one, this is a collective top five that Joe and I came to you today to discuss. So Joe, who is our first player that we're going to be talking about is our biggest winner, and these are players that are not free agents. They were a beneficiary of the moves that took place on their teams.
Yeah, first guy we're going to go with is cornerback Christian Gonzales of the New England Patriots. And he's a big winner because the Patriots prioritized Carlton Davis and brought him over. And now Christian Gonzales is not the only stud cornerback on this Patriots defense. He's got a partner in crime to help take some of the pressure off him, but also increase the chance of teams having to throw it to Christian Gonzales, because now it's kind of pick your poison essentially. Do you want to throw against Carlton Davis, who's a solid corner in his own right, or do you want to try to attack Christian Gonzales? So definitely opens the doors up in terms of the IDP with more targets Christian Gonzales could get.
The big thing is Christian Gonzales has to stay healthy. He has to, that's the big thing. But with Carlton Davis coming in, he's a guy who has shown a lot of talent in this league, and he got paid a lot of money. So to me, like you said, the big thing with the corner is, and they're the forgotten man usually when it comes to fantasy. A lot of people aren't even going to be starting a cornerback in IDP, right? We go against the grain there. But when it comes to Gonzales in any corner, really, it's like you need to have a competent guy on the other side. Because if you have a Patrick Surtain who, whatever is considered really good, and teams just avoid him completely, then you're not going to get a lot of fantasy points. So because now you've got Carlton Davis there, Christian Gonzales should benefit. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. And Joe, we're going to be talking about this next guy, but due to the pass rush improving, that also helps the secondary quite a bit. So we also think there could be another possible beneficiary for the Patriots for our second biggest IDP winner.
The second winner on the Patriots defense is going to be defensive lineman Keion White. You mentioned the improvements in the secondary, but obviously also spent big money for getting Milton Williams. Going to be a big key cog in the middle of that defense there. But yeah, Keion White's a kind of a guy that broke out last year. They also brought in Harold Landry as well at the edge rusher position. I think both of those moves definitely help, and we know that like you mentioned, the secondary and the defensive front works in tandem together.
Yeah, well, we got to remember, right, when Mike Vrabel was the head coach for the Tennessee Titans, Harold Landry was his premier pass rusher. And Harold Landry had some really good years. I think Harold Landry is pretty underrated. He's never been a really household name. We played in Boston College, now goes back, now is able to play, with the Patriots. It's really, it couldn't get better. It's a perfect match. So I think now Keion White actually has a lot of players around him. Not to mention, again, we talked about this in a previous episode where we talked about for Caleb Williams, the biggest acquisition was the head coach. And I think I feel similarly when it comes to Keion White with Mike Vrabel. He talked about missing Bill Belichick's hard coaching style and kind of wanting him to be pushed. And Jer'Zhan Newton wasn't doing that. You're going to get that with Mike Vrabel. So to me, It's only going to bring out the best of him. And he had a breakout year this past year. So there's the defense. I don't like saying it as a Bills fan, but their defense definitely improved in free agency.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because they've had a ton of money to spend. Unfortunately, there just wasn't really anyone to spend it for them on offense. So they had to turn to the defense, really improve that. And, it'll be interesting to see if a guy like Christian Barmore can come back. I know you have your doubts with the whole blood clot thing, but if he is able to come back as well, I mean, this defensive front for the Patriots is a really formidable one.
Yeah, and you got Robert Spillane now in the middle as well. So, I mean, and you got still get Kyle Duggar in there too, who's an impact player. So they've got some real pieces. I mean, the Patriots were able to be walked over this past season. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they are really showing themselves as a possible up-and-coming team, which should concern teams.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, Vrabel's always been able to get the most out of his team and out of his players, and I don't see that changing. Him going back to where he played in New England.
Who is our third biggest IDP NFL free agent winner?
All right. At the third spot here, we're going to go with edge rusher Yaya Diaby with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And big reason why this is they were able to get Hassan Reddick from the Jets over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And not to mention just another rotational player, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, moved on as well. So clearing more playing time for Reddick and Yaya Diaby as well. But I think they've got some interesting guys in the middle of that defense. Really, Diaby was really just lacking another piece and another guy to go with on the outside. They drafted Chris Braswell last year, who I was pretty high on, but I think he just needs more time to continue to develop. And adding a veteran like Hassan Reddick, I think, will also help with his development moving forward.
Well, not to mention, we talk about this all the time. What do you have in the interior pass rush? Well, they've got probably, you could argue, the best tandem in interior defensive line out there with Kalijah Kancey, who's a phenomenal player, and then you got Vita Vea, who's a huge man that's hard to move around. So when you have somebody like that can shed blocks, I mean, this whole defensive line is going to be very disruptive. So for a guy like you said, Diaby, who's an up-and-coming player, he's got a lot of supporting cast. He may fall into some sacks because of just the players around him.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot, he's kind of he had a disappointing last year. I think a lot of that had to do with the, injuries he was battling on early on in camp and everything. So hopefully he's able to come into the season more healthy and get back to the sack numbers we saw in his rookie year.
All right, Joe. So who is our fourth biggest IDP NFL free agency winner?
Yep, going to stay at the edge rusher position and going to go with Tuli Tuipulotu of the Los Angeles Chargers.
Nice job, Joe.
Thank you. So not only did they bring back Khalil Mack, but Joey Bosa has now moved on to the Buffalo Bills, clearing a space. Chargers are a team that really likes to rotate their edges. One less guy to that rotation. We'll see who they bring in to kind of fill it in, but I think Tuli Tuipulotu really has got a chance to step right in and be that guy opposite of Khalil Mack here.
He's another guy who had a breakout year this past season. Really took a step forward, and now I think it's his time to shine. Obviously, like you said, they do rotate, but I do think maybe that's a possibility of, you got to remember, Bosa is injury prone, and Mack was older. They had sights for the playoffs. So it's like they didn't want these guys to get injured or to get fatigued. So in my mind, I think it was, and there's no way of me knowing this, but I think it's almost due to the effectiveness of Tuipulotu, which made them be like, we got to rotate this guy in because he's being such a difference maker. Should be interesting to see if that will continue to happen, or because he has that youth on his side, maybe he does play more snaps.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, if there's one guy that's it's going to, you mentioned the youth is on his side versus a guy like Khalil Mack. I mean, he'll definitely get the opportunities, I would think, to go ahead and be out there and stay on the field and see what he can do.
Well, and I would even think they would try to preserve Khalil Mack. Like I said, they're they have aspirations for something much larger. So they're not going to want to be playing this guy a bunch of snaps during the IDP season. Yeah.
No, that is true. I mean, they're gonna keep him healthy for the postseason when things really matter.
All right, Joe. So who is our fifth biggest IDP NFL free agency winner?
Yeah, last guy, if you've been keeping up with our IDP videos, we've talked about him a decent bit here. Steve and I really like him. And that's going to be defensive tackle Jer'Zhan Newton with the Washington Commanders. Jonathan Allen was released, which I think a lot of that was due to the fact of Jer'Zhan Newton being there. He had a pretty good rookie year. This gives him the opportunity to really be playing alongside Daron Payne, increased playing time, which, both of you and I, when he was drafted, was kind of bummed. We were looking forward to him, but then he was like, he's trapped behind Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Well, now Jonathan Allen's out of the way. I know they did bring in Javon Kinlaw in free agency. No, we're not really that concerned about it. He's probably going to be more of a rotational guy, but I think big things are coming in his second year for Jer'Zhan Newton.
He already was starting to flash, and I believe it was he had some sort of injury ahead of camp. I think it was a foot injury of some kind. It was playing franchise or something of that nature. I don't remember. But anyways, so he started off kind of late out of the gate, but he has that pass rush ability, which makes him so interesting for interior defensive linemen. You need that type of ability to really be one of the elites. And at the end of the day, Payne, he had really one good year. He really hasn't done all that much beside that. And like you said, I'm not concerned about Kinlaw. Kinlaw's been a rotating defensive tackle, and honestly, he's been a disappointment. I mean, he's a former first-round pick. I honestly was shocked that the Commanders gave him as much money as they did. They might have been negotiating with themselves, frankly. But, Adam Peters obviously has a familiarity. He was in San Fran when they drafted him. So, obviously, he sees the appeal with him. But I think at the end of the day, clearing the way with Jonathan Allen being released, and now that Jer'Zhan Newton gets to step in there. And people forget, too, they released Fadarian Mathis, former second-round pick out of Alabama, that, they had, it was a previous regime, but he was also there. So I think Newton's going to be the guy here, and it's going to really allow him to step up.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, with the pass rush upside that he's got, the increased playing time, I mean, this really will we should really see that sack number increase for him this upcoming season.
He gets to step in as the guy. Now you could say that they did lose Fowler, and he had a lot of sacks, and they don't really have a lot of pass rush help, and they have Dorrance Armstrong, so that'll be interesting to see if they get some outside edge rushers in there because they've been really good in the interior. They got to add to the edges, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely, but they'll definitely be afforded that opportunity with this draft class. It's very deep at the edge rusher position. So, we'll see how this Commanders defense will shape up here.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about the 5 biggest IDP NFL free agency winners, and we're curious what you think as well. Put it in the comments below. Who do you think was an NFL free agency winner? Maybe you pick one of the players that we did. Maybe you have somebody different, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.